Hey everybody, well here we are, huh? I'm sitting in my guest room wearing Eagle colors right here, so go Philadelphia Eagles or LCA Eagles, either one. And I'm either not getting sick or not getting someone else sick. I'm not sure which one, or both. Either you're not getting sick from me or I'm not getting sick from you. But what a world we live in, huh? I'd much rather be going over operating systems in class with you, but we cannot do that. So we are here, and I'm hoping to go over everything at various points in this video. A wonderful box will appear right here, like that. And I think I could even do that. Yeah, there we go. And hopefully that box will help you. I talk fast in class. I talk fast on videos. That's good news because it'll make less time for us to get through the material. If you get stuck, you can rewind. I bet you wish you could do that in classes, rewind me like that. But you can't, but you can on this. So feel free to rewind, watch anything you may have missed. I'll try to note the quiz questions for the quiz on Friday for you all. That quiz will be on the LMS like any other quiz. Also note that your participation points this week are to ask one question per video. So there will be 2 videos. This is the first one. There will be another one following, and you will be required on the class wall on lms.remweb.com to ask me one question about anything as long as it's appropriate, of course. Hopefully that goes without saying. So with that, further ado, let's talk about operating systems. The first question on your quiz this Friday, will be, what do operating systems do? And I kid you not, the answer is going to be, they operate your system. Duh. That is the answer. The operating systems operate your system. If you can remember from the first week of class, we talked about the history of computers. Operating systems became a thing in about the 3rd generation, the 1970s. People started to realize the need for a program that runs all the other programs and that helps run the entire system. So they created some early operating systems. The first, give me a second. The first operating systems were what we call command-based. Command-based means they came almost with their own programming language. So on a command-based system, if you wanted to play Batman, you literally had to write run Batman, and after you type that and hit enter, it would run Batman. Or you would have to say open a certain file and go point to the file directory and it would open that file. When I was a kid in the 90s, my uncle had a Commodore computer. He sold Commodore computers and they still had a command-based operating system, and I played Roadrunner. So I literally had to type run Roadrunner, enter, and it would run Roadrunner. So those were the command-based systems. They were pretty good, but each of them had their own programming language. Each of them had different commands. Even though there was some standards there, they became unwieldy. So in the mid-80s to late 80s, Microsoft put out Windows, which was your first graphic user interface, or GUI, operating system. Windows 1 was a complete disaster. It was a complete failure. It wasn't intuitive at all. It was a mess. Nobody liked it. It didn't take off. So Microsoft took the tack that if at first you don't succeed, try again. So they tried again with Windows 2, and it's a little bit better, but still not great. But Windows 3.1 was the mother of all operating systems. I remember as a kid on my Microsoft PC, we got a computer, and it was incredible. I had more fun playing with the operating system than I did playing the computer games on it. You could double click a thing and a window would pop out and it would go bloop like that, which was really, really cool. And there we go. And it was just this awesome thing. And you could minimize it, you could exit, and you could do all kinds of fun things. Windows followed it up in 1995 with Windows 95. That's when they added a start button, which listed all your programs for you, which was really neat. And then you had Windows XP. Windows 8 in the late 90s, early 2000s was a huge step back. That's right when tablets were starting to take off. But then they sort of returned to Windows 95 and XP with Windows 10, which is what you guys all use now. Graphic user interfaces are the best. They just give you so much opportunity to play around and to see kind of everything, and then you have your icons on the desktop and all that, which is really, really awesome. So now all the operating systems you use, whether it's iOS or whether it's Google Android's operating system or Windows, they are all graphic user interface. They're all completely intuitive. When Windows 3.1 came out, my grandma could figure out how to use it, which was crazy that the grandma could do this, and that was kind of the neat thing. Grandma could not figure out how to do the command-based interfaces, but she could do Windows easily enough. So next, let's talk about the functions of an operating system. Why do we have an operating system? Well, as I said, it's to operate your system, duh. But there's a few ways that it operates your system. The first thing it does is it provides a user interface for the entire machine. It kind of lets the user access and use all parts of the machine. Important in this, and this is something else you need to know, is that every operating system has what's called a kernel and a shell. A kernel are all the files and programs that run the operating system itself. The shell, so if you think of a nut, the kernel's the seed, and then the shell are your programs and your files that the operating system runs. If you want to see the kernel for your operating system in Microsoft Windows, you just open the Windows folder. When you open the Windows folder, sometimes you'll get an error message that says, be careful what you change in here because you can crash your whole system if you change something in there. But there's a lot of really cool folders in there. All the icons for your computer mouse are stored in there. So if you want to change your little mouse icon to kind of a bicep, right, pointing that way, you can do that in there. All your fonts are stored in there. Several of your directories and other things are in there. So that's your kernel. And then the shell is everything else that your operating system runs. So in order to understand how all that works, there's a framework you need to know, and this is also going to be on the quiz. And the framework you need to know is that BIOS loads operating systems, operating system loads programs, and programs load files. So let's go back to your BIOS. Your BIOS is your basic input-output system of your machine. So if you have a phone, your BIOS is the touch screen and how all that's wired together. It's all those decoder circuits we talked about when we talked about hardware. It's all that type of stuff. It's just the basic input-output system. And most machines come with their own internal sort of operating system, if you will, if you could even call it that. But it's your basic input-output system. And what happens is when manufacturers put together machines, whether it's a tablet, a phone, a computer, whatever, they leave a space in the memory for the operating system. And the BIOS is wired to load whatever is in that space first. So there's actually a spot on your memory that's reserved for Windows or for iOS or whatever you're using, for Android. And when you hit the power button, that spot will look to see if anything is saved in that place, and they will load that first. If nothing is saved in that place, if you don't have an operating system, they'll give you an error message and they'll say, operating system not found. Do you want to install one? And if so, where do you want to install it from? A CD, a pen drive, or something like that. And you have to kind of point to them to where it is so they can install and pull it over. So that's your BIOS. It's your basic input-output system. It's your keyboard, your monitor, your touchscreen, your speaker, and how all that's wired together, and it loads your operating system. Then once your operating system is up, the shell of the system is there to load programs. Programs are a list of processes that do various things. You know what a program is. We call them apps now. We used to call them programs when I was a kid. And then programs load and edit files. So BIOS, operating systems, programs, files. So that's something you probably already knew, but it's still important to go over. As we're talking about programs, we need to talk about processes, and then we also need to talk about drivers. So let's talk about drivers first. A driver is a particular type of program that comes with your input and output devices. Now, when I was a kid and we bought a printer, the printer would come with a CD. And we had to put that CD in the CD drive and click install, and it would install a driver that would essentially teach the operating system how to drive the printer. And once you did that, it would run the printer. Now, printers are more sophisticated, and when we first connect to the printer will install the driver automatically, and half the time it won't even tell you that it did it. It'll just do it automatically over Wi-Fi or over the connection. Just when you plug it in, it will automatically install that driver. Sometimes you might get a message saying, do you want to install the driver or something, but most times it just does it automatically. So drivers are special files, and they are there to manage your input and output devices. Your monitor has a driver program. Your keyboard has one, your projectors have one, your microphone has one, your printers have one, all of that. And so a driver is a special type of program that drives your operating system. Drives your input-output devices. So that's what they do. Now, as I said, a program itself is a list of processes. So remember, drivers are even a list of processes. And how operating systems manage that, we went over this the first or second, maybe third week of class, but it's still important to go over, is how your operating system manages all these processes is it divides them up and gives basically every single program a split second to do what it needs to do. That's called, wait for it, time sharing. And so it allows the programs to share time. So let's say we have 1 second and you have your list of programs that need a process to be run. They get in a line and the operating system flies through that line. It says, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need? What do you need? And then it goes back. What do you need? Do you need? Do you need? And it just kind of rotates through that way. Now with drivers, and we've discussed this before, drivers are given permission to interrupt and cut the line. That's called interrupt, right? Polling means they have to wait in line. Interrupt means that if the keyboard needs to put a K on the screen, the keyboard gets to jump in front of everybody else and put that K right on the screen, and it makes the input-output processing so much more efficient. And so that's how drivers work. They get an automatic sort of priority in the line. But other than that, what your operating system does anytime it's open is it just runs through all the processes. It just runs through everything right there, and just when it's done, goes back to the top and gives everybody a split second to sort of do their thing. So that's how it manages processes. It's called time sharing. So that is the basic functions of an operating system. It provides you an interface to interact with your machine. It manages process, programs, and files. The last thing it does is what we're going to talk about in the next video. The last and most important thing an operating system does, it allows a user to save files to the hard drive, and it comes up with clever ways that the files can be saved to a hard drive. We're going to go over that in the next video because that's another thing entirely in and of itself. But for now, that's just a brief introduction to the history of operating systems, what they're for, and some of the things they do. Once again, if you have a question, post it in the comments below. You're required to get 5 of your 10 participation points for the week. Please keep the questions appropriate. Thank you.